Welcome back to the United Pubcast for your bit of a match preview. Obviously, League Cup semi-final on the horizon and a little bit of news around Manchester United. So I got Josh back on the pubcast just for a bit of a chin wag and sort of discuss the latest goings on. So first things, Josh, after 9 games unbeaten or 9 games winning, Man United have sort of been brought back down, not to earth, but a little bit back down to earth with a draw at Crystal Palace and the loss at Arsenal. So talk to me how you feel in this last couple of days.
Yeah, look, I think naturally when United drop points, there's always that overreaction on social media. Very, very, very common with United. I've been used to it now for the past, almost 10 years now since Fergie left. A bit of a meltdown, but I think if you're realistic and you look at the expectations of where United should be at the season, hindsight's a fine thing, and I think we are where we are. We probably are where we deserve to be, just in terms of how we've played this season. And third, fourth place, it's probably an expectation. And I think that the next 2 games, should I say, or 3 games even, with the second leg of the Carabao, the League Cup, it sort of probably epitomises what United are going to strive to achieve this season, and that's to end, quite a long trophy drought, whether that be the hopefully the League Cup first and then the FA Cup.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Just on, but before we get into it, there's 1 or 2 bits of news that I do want to touch on that is breaking, especially, I'm sure a lot of people do know, especially around the A-League, which is obviously exciting for us here in Australia. Disappointment when you lose to Arsenal, of course, in terms of the situation around that. Obviously, it's going to sting. It's going to be very disappointing. Ultimately, though, it stung for me for an hour or so, and the whole day. It obviously did ruin my Monday technically, but ultimately, I went to bed Monday night quite happy with Manchester United, and it was off the back of Eric Ten Hag. It was the way he dealt with the defeat, in terms of saying, okay, we were good. Okay, I can admit we were good. We're also bad at times. But it gave me, I don't know if it was because it was against Arteta and what we've seen Arteta, the struggles he's come through, and now the final result. And you can sort of see the similarity. So the way Ten Hag is dealing with that is giving me hope of what I will see in the future. But ultimately, the hurt against the defeat against Arsenal, for me, lasted a couple of hours. After that, I was thinking, hang on, I'm very happy to be a Manchester United fan at the moment. And that hasn't been the case in recent history. Recently, 2 years ago, if we lost at Arsenal, I wouldn't speak for a month. But now, here I am a day later, sort of looking forward to the next fixture, and I just think that is a testament to what Eric Ten Hag has done.
Absolutely. It's a remarkable run of form. I think people forget the form we had since the World Cup. I think going back from a month away from football at the start of December, you were thinking United are going to continue their form, and lo and behold, we've survived, a congested Christmas period where traditionally you are going to drop points, and they've come through it pretty clean. And they're still, in contention for top 4, which was probably always our realistic target at the start of the season when we look at the signings that we made at the start of the season. I mean, look, for me, I'm still living off last weekend at Scruffy Murphy's, taking my friend in, who's a massive City fan, to the back of the room, a crowd full of United fans to watch us win the game is, for me, unforgettable, and I'm still living in that moment. Yeah, we've dropped points, and if you said at the start of that City game, United are going to get 4 points in the next 3 games, you probably wouldn't have thought that, 1 point would be against Crystal Palace. You thought that would be the 3. So I think United can be really proud of where they are this season. Obviously, we're not going to be happy with it. We always want the best. And realistically, as a United fan at the moment, when you've got such terrific form we've not seen against the top 6 probably since, I'm going to say Louis van Gaal was manager, because he had a fantastic, run against those top clubs. You kind of strive for better things, and it's, yeah, I understand. I'll never understand like meltdowns after games like this, but I can sort of empathise in a way, because United have such high expectations again, and I'm probably proud, to have that association with United where we only want sort of the best results. And winning against Arsenal at home, Liverpool at home, City at home, those are really, really big games that we've won already. So it's only natural that you're going to be a little bit disappointed. But in terms of where we are this season, I don't think you can argue Arsenal. As much as we hate to say it, and we hate sort of, acknowledging their success, they have been remarkable. And I suppose in a way, we take the mick out of Arteta. We've taken the mick out of Arteta for a while, but he's doing, he's instilled a great culture in the club, which is reflected in their performances. I don't want to make it an Arsenal podcast, but I think the game sort of epitomised what we're trying to do, albeit probably a year and a half behind them in terms of their development. They've had that manager. They've had that project now for 2.5 years. Ten Hag, he will get the backing, and touch wood, we will be in a similar position hopefully next year.
Well, we
Never
will
saying
look
that's
even
always
longer.
but
You say sort of 2.5 years. You look, it's potentially even really longer in terms of the mess Eric Ten Hag has sort of had to unravel in regards to the mess sort of Louis van Gaal, Jose Mourinho, Solskjaer, Ralph Rangnick have all sort of placed on Ten Hag's doorstep. It does feel like that, but apologies if any rain is come or any background noise. It is absolutely pelting down in Sydney, so apologies if you can hear anything through my microphone, but just think of it as a little bit of Manchester rain. But Sydney comes into my next topic. I'll just say that there's some people in the live chat. George, good to see you, mate. Hope all is well on the other side of the world. Obviously in England at the moment. George, good to see you, mate. Who will make their return first, Larry, Sancho, or Martial? We'll get into Jadon Sancho if he's going to be back for the League Cup match. But if you do miss Larry, his latest video is out, 5 things post-Arsenal match. So go back on the last video on the page and you can get your glimpse of Larry. Sully, good to see you, mate. He's also thinking feel sorry for Forest having to play us next. Fingers crossed there is a sort of bounce back for Manchester United. There needs to be. It's a very important game. But we'll get into the match preview. And Chris, good to see you as always, mate. But as I said, in regards to Sydney, we'll start as Australian-based Manchester United fans. We'll always have a bit of one eye on the A-League and sort of matters that's happening in Australian football. And there is a little bit of news breaking around Manchester United and the A-League, which doesn't happen often. There is a former Red about to join Western Sydney Wanderers, which is very good for me because their training ground is literally up the road from me. So only a few minutes away. But it does look, when you put 2 and 2 together from the evidence that we do have, that he's going to be Morgan Schneiderlin joining the Wanderers. And I was just spoken to a player I used to play against in my younger days, plays for the Wanderers. I asked him, is it one of these 2 players? He said he can't give a name. He said one of these 2 players, and one was a realistic player in Schneiderlin and one was an unrealistic player. And he gave the nod to the yes, it's very likely one of those. So it does look like Morgan Schneiderlin is joining the Wanderers, which is good. We'll go back a bit of a trip down memory lane, Josh. He's regarded as a flop signing. I think, I hate using that term, but that is the term that is sort of thrown at Morgan Schneiderlin, big money signing. Ultimately, though, I liked him. I thought he was a good player, and it never quite got going. You could throw the same for Bastian Schweinsteiger in that same thing, different context. But just never quite got going. But I remember when he was at Southampton, he was smashing. He was man of the match every time he rocked up at Old Trafford. And he's kind of that signing at the moment, let's say like a Declan Rice. Everyone's saying, go get that player. He's going to be the player. That was Morgan Schneiderlin. He was the best defensive midfielder in the Premier League who wasn't playing at a big club. So every club, go get him. And that's what Declan Rice or players like that is now. So I liked him. Just a shame it didn't quite work at Old Trafford. Just your sort of memories of him.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to say I have plenty of memories of him. He just probably epitomised the time for United that I want to forget. He came in Van Gaal's second season, which was probably, Van Gaal's worst season by the FA Cup. It's not really, fond memories. I don't think it would be a failure. I think it'd just be a sign of sort of the times when he came to United. Similarly with Schweinsteiger, came to United a couple of years too late. And even though Schneiderlin was probably a lot younger than Schweinsteiger when he came, I think under a different manager might have been a little bit of more of a success story because he definitely wasn't suited to Mourinho.
Yeah, no, look, it's one of those. It does happen. You just have to sort of remember the better times. I think he's played over 350 games or something in the English Premier League. He's obviously playing at Nice at the moment. Well, that was his last club before he is to arrive on our shores. But as I said, the training ground is literally up the road from me. So Larry and I will do our best to invite him round for the pubcast, and fingers crossed we can get him on and talk about probably what would you say his highlight in the Manchester United shirt. You'd say that there aren't many memories, but look, he was on I don't think he came on, but I know he was on the bench in the FA Cup final at least. So he's involved, did have an FA Cup. I'm sure there's probably the Community Shield after that as well. So he's an FA Cup winner. He's worth going to say hi to. So fingers crossed we can get Morgan Schneider on the pubcast. That would be great. Do leave a like if you are looking forward to that, if we can make that happen, obviously. George, last word on Australian football, Josh, just in regards to York getting sacked after his dig at MacArthur. Look, who knows what was said, but it looks like it was along the lines of Dwight York. Obviously, for anyone not familiar, he is managed or was managing here in Australia as well. Pretty much telling the players what he thought of them in regards to their standards compared to professional football in Europe. And then maybe 1 or 2 people did get upset, and it looked like was the final straw in a bit of a strained relationship. So, Josh, it's been an eventful sort of couple of months for Manchester United fans down under in regards to Melbourne. They were here in Melbourne a few months ago. Now, a Man United legend was here doing very well. Now he's going to leave back to Europe, and Morgan Schneider, former United players, coming to our shores. So not often you get this sort of news down under for us.
No, I mean, look, it's great that so many former Premier League players are sort of making the plunge. I mean, Charlie
Nani as well. Nani, unfortunately, done his ACL.
Yeah, but he still sort of came, albeit for a short while. Charlie Austin, I was out a couple of months, and then he had enough. And Now it's going to be Schneiderlin's turn, but I think there needs to be definitely something that's done. I mean, I'm not going to lie and say I watch A-League because I don't, but if they want to sort of get to a good level and increase the viewership, they need sort of these prolific signings, because there's a huge gap in sort of enticing fans to watch the sport when it's not the main sport of the country, and that's always going to be that challenge.
No, look, I agree. And look, I don't go to A-League games. This might get me out of bed. This might get me to an A-League game. Fingers crossed. If anyone wants to buy me a ticket to a Wanderers game, I'll sit next to you and I'll buy you a beer, and we can critique Morgan Schneiderlin's performance in the Western Sydney Wanderers midfield. So that, Josh, Stretford End, this is what the title of the podcast in regards to, we'll get into the match preview in regards to the League Cup semi-final, but Man United released a statement that the executive seats in the Stretford End, I'm sure when everyone sees the Stretford End when there's no fans in the crowd, the E and the T are a darker shade of red. They're almost a maroon colour, and that sort of signifies padded seats. And I'm not sure when they got put in, but a while ago, executive seating got put in the Stretford End. And now that obviously is going to take away from the atmosphere, which is obviously a huge issue at Manchester United. Now, they've come out with a statement. Muster's worked closely with the club over the last couple of years to sort of lose those seats and sort of return to just sort of, I assume, just general admission or season ticket holders back in their sort of rightful spot right in the heart of the Stretford End. I just want your opinion, Josh, on, okay, this is a good thing for Man United fans. Obviously, it's likely going to increase the atmosphere by 5 or 10%, which is exactly what we want. Ultimately, though, in regards to off-field, the Glazers are leaving, but the Glazers are still in charge. But there seems to be a little bit more change at the moment. I don't know where or why this change is coming about in regards to, you'd assume that new owners would come in and implement this. But Ten Hag's getting a little bit more control, it would seem. Now, not enough control, but a little bit more control. There's these one or two decisions as well in terms of able to sell Ronaldo, so they're able to drop your club captain off the field in regards to a minor thing for the club, but a huge thing for the fans in terms of putting these general admission seats back in the Stretford End. I'm just thinking, how and why is this change coming about? Is it, my opinion is just Richard Arnold, I was going to say Ed Woodward, but Richard Arnold and the like just aren't going to the Glazers anymore for sort of signing off on anything because they're not having anything to do with it. They're just sort of running the football club how it needs to be run, because there's obviously those stories months or years ago where Jose Mourinho had to get signed off. He wanted a new desk for his office and Joel Glazer didn't sign off on it. So I'm just thinking, my opinion is they're just not going to the Glazers anymore. But just your thinking behind this Stretford End bit of news.
I think it's a really good sort of marketing statement to see that the clubs bringing football back to real fans and making it affordable. But I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but just to disappoint you, it's the cheapest executive stand there is at Old Trafford. And I know quite a lot of fans there that have season tickets in that area, been going for 20, 30 years, sitting in those seats. They just go somewhere else. They're not making it accessible. Yeah, they are making it accessible. I mean, that's a lie. They are sort of making it accessible for fans to go, but it's not. People don't pay good money to sit in the Stretford End executive seats on a match day. It's just a little bit more overpriced than a normal ticket. It's if you read between the lines, it's nothing more than a publicity stunt, and it probably sets like a better message for probably someone that doesn't understand the structure of the stadium and where people sit. If you think of executives and you think of corporate fans that want to pay extravagant money to have an Old Trafford experience, you think to those executives that sit in the south stand, in the executive box in the south stand, who sit high up in the executive box of the north stand. Those are the high quality elite sort of executive seats. Those seats behind the Stretford End, it's just a more expensive season ticket location where people can have season tickets. I wouldn't say unaffordable prices as well. It's only a little bit more than what the highest category of tickets are, which are traditionally in the centre of the south stand or in the centre of the north stand on a halfway line. I think it's great. I think it is good because traditionally you associate the Stretford End as being the vocal point of atmosphere at Old Trafford, specifically on games that aren't high quality games that are in demand. For example, the Cities, the Liverpools, the Arsenals, the Chelsea. But any other game of the season, League Cup or a reserve game, the Stretford End is the focal point of where the atmosphere will build up on match days. And having that message of giving it back to the fans is a great sort of ploy. It's a great sort of message it sends. But between the lines, it's not achieving much in the long term. It's just a couple more tickets available to fans. But in hindsight, there's a 7-8 year waiting list for season tickets.
No, look, that's fascinating insight. And someone who's got a season ticket at Old Trafford. Whereabouts is your? Just tell the listeners your season ticket at Old Trafford. Whereabouts in the stadium?
I sit in the south stands, just towards the left near the tunnel. So sat there most of my life. My dad's had it for 30 years before, but one of my best friends who I'll see when I go back to England. He sat very close to that executive box, executive seats per se. Just having the family stands next to those seats, and it's not,
It looks like a lot of the players' boxes. I see the players' wives and the girlfriends. That looks like it's in the Stretford end in regards to where they sit, just sort of under the top tier, at the back of the bottom tier.
Yeah, but that's sort of within a corner where they've got like a balcony accessible. This is sort of mid stand. There's no sort of barriers. There's no boxes to separate the Stretford end. It just goes straight into the upper and it goes straight into the lower. But it's great. I mean, look, you want a stand where you associate hardcore fans to be sort of just hardcore fans, not people sitting in seats. I mean, I can't remember a time I've sat in the Stretford. Well, I can't remember a time I've been in the Stretford end where I've sat down. From a Carling Cup perspective, I remember when Man United beat Man City in 2009, 2010 season. That's the only time in a Carling Cup game I've ever seen fans throughout the stadium stand. And it's probably a testament to what it could achieve in the Stretford end as well if they made it all just for the fans, because it's very. I suppose it's very. I'm trying to think of the right word for this, but when you do have executive seats around you, there's like an expectation of behaving when you're around them because they want that experience. But for the South Stand, yes, I get that. But for the Stretford end, it doesn't make a difference. It's just padded seats.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating insight. And I was looking back at photos that popped up, as I said, about a couple of weeks ago on Facebook. Those memories sort of pop up, and it was 10 years to the day a couple of weeks ago. My last trip to Old Trafford, and it was the first time I did 2 games back to back. Sat both in the Stretford end, right at the back, right at the top of the Stretford end, right at the back. And just in terms of everyone has favourite Manchester United moments of their supporting lives. And for me, yes, I remember trophies, watching us win trophies sort of thing. But in terms of sitting at the back of the Stretford, or standing, as you say, at the back of the Stretford end, it's an unbelievable experience. And obviously one of those games was against Liverpool, the last time we won the Premier League title. So absolutely, you mentioned it. A good thing in regards to explaining that and providing that little bit of insight, but also we can sit here and you rightly say, okay, it's nothing really at the end of the day. But then ultimately perception is reality, and it looks good. And ultimately we've been doing things as a club that over the last 5-10 years that hasn't looked good to the eye. And I think ultimately we can be critical and just dissect things, but ultimately you do have to give a little bit of credit where it's due.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great message. It sort of epitomises the period of change that United are currently going through, not just within the football, but also in the structure of the club. There's a lot more involvement. I'd say a lot more involvement, but there's fan involvement now. Muster doing a hell of a lot of work. And I think going back to sort of the structure of the stadium, there was always that, epitome with United that when you go into games and you were searching for a ticket and you got a ticket at the Stretford, then there was always the question, you were upper Stretford or lower Stretford? And if you were upper Stretford, you were winning because you were with the fans, with those fans that were going to stand the whole game. Fortunately, I don't normally sit there, but I remember swapping a ticket for when United beat City. I think it was in 2015. I think we won 4-2. I think Carrick went off injured. And it was
one matter scored a breakaway.
Yeah, absolutely bouncing atmosphere in the upper. But look, the lower Stretford has its moments as well. I mean, I was there when Park scored the header against Liverpool, and it's fantastic being in the midst of it. But I think to have a unified sort of stand where you just associate it with just people standing, and obviously there's a lot of work at the moment now with safe standing coming back into football. I know Man City are doing it. There's talk of United even doing it in the next year or so. Could really make leaps, big steps to make that move from the board to have it just fully for the fans, fully for the sort of season ticket fans as well. A really good decision.
It's a fascinating point there in terms of your memory in terms of people debating upper Stretford and lower Stretford. And I remember when I found out my tickets were in the Stretford end, my visual of watching on TV was behind the goal, so that lower bit of the Stretford end. So that's what I envisaged as the Stretford end. And when I got the ticket and realised I was going up all those stairs, it's going to be at the back. Now, I wasn't disappointed, but ultimately, if I was in my picture in my head was where I wanted to be, it wasn't there. I was right, second back row of the Stretford end, right at the top. It was unbelievable. I thought, oh my God. I was thinking this is, as you mentioned, in terms of where the hardcore fans were. It was right at the back of the Stretford end, and fantastic. So ultimately, a good decision by the club. Let's see how it pays off, and look, ultimately, we'll be having many stadium discussions in the near future when those new owners come in. And look, is this going to impact that? Probably not, but very interesting times. If you are happy with United's decision and do like a bit of Stretford and talk, please do leave a like on the video. Now, football. Manchester United are in a semi-final. League Cup, first leg against Nottingham Forest. Josh, full strength for me. Now, obviously, you got to take into consideration players' injuries and fitness, obviously. But with Reading on the weekend, you can still. I want to go win the FA Cup. Still go with a team that can beat Reading. But ultimately, if I'm picking this is the League Cup versus the FA Cup. The FA Cup is bigger, but for me, I go 100% full strength in the League Cup.
Yeah, look, I think realistically, League Cup with the teams that are left in it, you got to have United as favourites to win that. So. Let's. Does
that give you confidence? Does that give you confidence or worry you?
Look, I think if it was one game, it would worry me. The fact that it's gone back to a 2-leg semi-final, I think United are in a position where you wouldn't expect them to fuck up. But if we were to lose that game 1-0, you'd be pretty certain that we'd go at Old Trafford, we'd win the next game 3-0. I think get this game out the way, go away from home, try and win convincingly with a full stretch team, because Reading, there's not much of a gap between Reading and Nottingham Forest, I'm not going to lie. They're probably two teams that could very well be in the Championship next season. Probably wouldn't think of it with Forest with the amount of money they spent. They might still stay up. But you'd bank on United to beat Reading at home. Shouldn't be really an issue.
Oh no, that's what I'm thinking. Now look, any game is hard. Or we could go to a team in League Two and make hard work of it as professional football. At the end of the day, Nottingham Forest could turn up and beat us 2-0, and deservedly so. Who knows what's going to happen? But ultimately, in terms of the percentages here, this is what and football never works out ideal. But Eric Ten Hag, I think, ideally would say, okay, go beat Nottingham Forest 3-0, and you're going to do that with your strongest time. You're probably not going to win away at the City Ground with your B team. So I think you're 100% try and get a 2 or 3-0 win, and then maybe in that second leg you start to get the job done. But maybe you can rotate a little bit there, because ultimately Eric Ten Hag has been a fantastic success for Manchester United at the moment. So far, he's been absolutely brilliant, and I think he will be. I think he will have future success down the line. But ultimately, this is a harsh reality. I think he's in a real position. He needs this trophy now. If he doesn't win this League Cup, he's not going to be Ten Hag out from anyone, from me, you, from anyone in the live chat. Any sensible fan won't call that, of course. But my God, in regards to things he'll need in his back pocket down the line, he needs this trophy. Considering if it was Liverpool and Chelsea in the other side of the draw, or City was still in there, you'd think, okay, it is what it is. It would be nice to win. If we don't, it is what it is. But considering it's only Newcastle and Wolves and Forest, he needs this trophy, in my opinion.
Absolutely, yeah. And you look at sort of the status of the teams that are in this tournament left. But all of these teams haven't won any sort of trophy for a long time. Forest went through the playoffs last year. Did they win the playoffs?
I forget. Who came up? Fulham would have won it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Forest, yeah.
Yeah, so you're playing a team that's probably most used to winning something recently on a big stage. And the playoff final is a very pressured final. I don't want to demean it, but it's the Championship is a very competitive league to get out of. So to win a playoff final, you have that sort of confidence of winning big games on big stages, because it is at Wembley. And playing that team in the semi-final sort of eliminates that. Against either Southampton or Newcastle, if against one of them in the final, you'd say United should have the stomach. Whereas if they were to play someone like Chelsea, City, Liverpool, teams that have won domestic trophies, teams that won European Cup, forgetting Chelsea won it 2 years ago, they're used to sort of the pressure. And United have been in a few finals since they've last won a trophy and lost on the big stage. So it's something that they need more than anything. I think it could really, kickstart the rest of the season, and probably see them through to consolidating fourth spot.
Well, Aaron brings up the point here, which I agree with 100%. 100% squad should not be a question. Look at City; they've built their recent success by taking this competition seriously. For us, it's a case of any trophy is a step forward. And I do look in terms of our last cup final. Unfortunately, I remember at Villarreal, in terms of the team just didn't show up. It just wasn't our day. It could have, on a flip of a coin, we won in a penalty shootout, but we went up for it. We didn't get the job done. Ultimately, I'm very excited, /nervous, but more excited in regards to going full strength and having players who weren't in that Europa final. And the two names are obviously the ones I allude to, is Rafael Varane and Casemiro. In terms of big game experience, no two players sort of can provide that more than those two players. So they're used to Champions League semi-finals and Champions League finals. They're not used to League Cup semi-finals away at the City Ground. But in terms of that big game field, they give me the confidence where on an off day under Jose Mourinho or Louis van Gaal, you could see us losing. Look at, you always bring up the game at MK Dons. You can bring up these results. You could see that happening. Under Erik ten Hag with Casemiro and Rafael Varane, that gives me confidence we're not going to sort of slip up.
Yeah, look, I agree with Aaron's comment as well. I think any trophy is a step forward, but I wouldn't say it's not a case of us taking it seriously. I think you look at City's success in this tournament, and it's the fact that, you know, City's second team's good enough to win. It's probably good enough to win, you know, a lot of trophies as well, bar the Champions League, because they've always failed at that point.
That is a point of when you do actually. I remember seeing it the other day.
They've got a good enough second team to sort of compete at, you know, big stages, whether that be even the Premier League, FA Cup, League Cup. But look, it's a really important trophy for United. And look, traditionally for me, the Carling Cup, the League Cup, it's never really been a big one for me. I never really too fussed if we get knocked out of it, but it's really bothered me this year.
I've always enjoyed it. I don't know why. In terms of
traditionally you see the players that don't get game time. For United this year, it's the Harry Maguire Cup. It's probably his trophy.
Well, we'll go into that in terms of a bit of a lineup. We've just said and both agreed to go along the lines of going full strength now. There is obviously going to have to be you're going to have to weigh up certain players' fitness and their injury, obviously. So if a player needs to drop out, maybe Malacia in for Luke Shaw sort of thing, do you change the goalkeeper? I don't think they'll do that. But there will be maybe one or two changes. But ultimately, in regards to if one is to miss out, I hope not. If Rafael Varane needs a rest in terms of he came off at the end of the Arsenal match, now I think that was just throwing the kitchen sink. I think that was just getting a forward on the pitch. But ultimately, could you see a situation where Harry Maguire comes back in?
Yeah, I actually think Maguire will start. I think Varane will be rested. Well, I say play a full strength team, take it seriously. I don't think it's going to back too many eyelids with Maguire starting. I don't think it's like huge drastic changes. When I say
it's not putting the kids in. You're still putting
he's not going to start Zidane Iqbal. And the lad he started in the I don't recall his name, but he started in the
Kobe Manu.
Yeah, Manu. Yeah, I don't think he'll start, but it'll be full strength in the sense of the players that don't traditionally, get game time. There might be maybe Eriksen takes a rest in this game.
That was my next one. My midfield, I'm thinking it would be Bruno Fernandes, Casemiro, and I'd actually throw Fred in for Eriksen.
Yeah.
So, and up front, this is obviously without any information from Erik ten Hag's press conference. We don't know the latest on Anthony Martial. Martial's out. Hypothetically, he's not playing. What do you do through the middle? Do you play Weghorst again, or do you bring Rashford through the middle and maybe play Garnacho, or potentially throw Jadon Sancho? And here we are saying go full strength, and now we're putting all these changes in the team. But ultimately, these players who can come in are first-team quality players. So, what are you thinking up front?
No, I think you'll probably go a bit more full strength up front. I think if it's to rest any players, it'd be probably through the middle or even in defence. As I said, with Maguire and possibly resting Eriksen. I actually think Rashford will start. I don't think
it has to for me.
Yeah, I think if he was going to rest a player, or if he was going to change, if he was going to bring Sancho in, I don't think it'd be for a game like this. I think it'd probably be for the FA Cup.
Ready.
Get him with a home crowd behind him, build his confidence up. I don't think the away crowd could possibly it won't do wonders for his confidence, and but confidence is really what Sancho needs. It's not a case of ability, because he has that ability. It's just his confidence, and welcoming him back in the FA Cup, if he was to start in a home side, it'd be the perfect sort of welcome back. Martial, I don't think he'll play. I think he'll play Weghorst through the middle, Rashford, and other winger, Anthony.
Anthony's in there. It's interesting. I saw Sully a little bit earlier in the chat when we were discussing the Stretford end. He was talking about the yellow wall at Borussia Dortmund. It's when this news came out a couple of weeks ago, I thought, okay, there's nothing in that. It seems like there is something genuine in Anthony Elanga to Borussia Dortmund. I'm just thinking Anthony Elanga is a bit of the forgotten man in regards to squad rotation. Now I think a lot of us are leaning to the side of things where it may be best to move him on, but he's obviously always one who's in and around squads like this for the League Cup. So I don't expect Anthony Elanga to play, but if there is rotation at front three, who knows, especially potentially shop window, we'll see how much value Erik ten Hag does place, or how much respect he has for Nottingham Forest. it will be interesting. But before we wrap up, if there is anything else in the live chat you do want us to discuss before we do wrap up, please do put your topics, questions in there, and Josh and I will crack on. But Adam, good to see you, mate. Got to go strong. For Forest, a weaker side still should be able to beat Reading. Yeah, well, the Reading one is interesting. I think, yes, they're a championship team. It's not away at Reading. It's at Old Trafford, so you expect 1 or 2 changes there. We should be comfortable against Reading.
They concede a hell of a lot of a lot of goals. Reading, I think they're definitely on a high.
Well, George, speaking of defence here, George just says, yep, Stam's still the coach. It's actually Paul Ince, still a Manchester United connection there. And Paul Ince, the only manager who has his eyes on like the 3rd round, the 4th round, and the 5th round. If you see photos of him, you'll know what I mean in regards to he's got his eyes on everything. And Adam here saying, Warren if Sancho doesn't return against Reading, that'll be that'll raise a lot of questions to me. Look, fingers crossed, all is good, but he looks back, training looks fit. Actually, looks like we've sort of, I hate sort of questioning players' sort of weight. We've done it far too often over Luke Shaw. Who are we on the other side of the world eating a bag of Doritos on the couch, talk about professional footballers and their weight? But ultimately, Jadon Sancho, he does look a little bit slimmer. Now, yes, they're just training photos, who knows? But that is something we've potentially looked at Jadon Sancho in regards to fitness. So fingers crossed he has got that weight down and is ready to go. But Josh, before we do wrap up, anything sort of Man United newsworthy you do want to talk about or anything come to mind?
No, look, I want to manage everyone's expectations, so don't be alarmed if we lose 1-0 tomorrow and win 4-0 next week. So,
as I said, I was kind of hoping we'd lose this first game. No, that was under the impression that we're going to not lose against Arsenal. I was sort of affording a loss against Nottingham Forest and get it out of the way. But hopefully, our loss against Arsenal is out of the way now. So, do you have a score prediction in regards to are you confident? I think we're confident of going through over the 2 legs, but is it a game?
I'm confident going through. I wouldn't be surprised if it's. I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow a really good atmosphere for them. I mean, to get to be in a
huge game for them.
Promoted season, it's a fantastic achievement. I've actually been to a Forest game against one of my mates when I went to university. He was a Burnley fan, and we sat in the away end for Burnley Forest. I tell you what, it's a terrific atmosphere before match day. They have like a huge build up. So
I remember
what tomorrow's going to be like for a semi-final sellout as well. Wouldn't be surprised if we drew the game. I don't think we'll lose. I think we've probably got enough in it not to lose the game. But yeah, maybe 1-1 or 2-1 to us, and then comfortable win hopefully at home.
Yeah, no, George is thinking the same thing there. And Munzi here, good to see as always. Go if you're not subscribed, go and check out the Sports Capital. But on that, you mentioned Forest there in regards to what an occasion it will be for them. Manchester United in the semi-final, and you mentioned watching Forest in the past. I remember when I was at Sheffield. I was at Sheffield United, but I went to a game at Sheffield Wednesday to watch Andy Cole. Andy Cole was playing for Nottingham Forest at the end of his career. And it was at Hillsborough, and it was midweek. It was a Wednesday night or a Thursday night game. And the Nottingham Forest fans, the travelling fans they had to fill the away stand was unbelievable. I was thinking the homes, there was 5,000 people in the home end. There was more away fans than there were Sheffield Wednesday fans. And obviously they're very proud of a very proud supporter base, very proud club, and obviously their European history. And ultimately, we're looking at this semi-final as, okay, let's rest 1 or 2 players. We all, unfortunately, or not unfortunately, or fortunately, we're all looking at Wembley and say, yeah, we'll beat Newcastle in the final, or we'll play Wolves in the final, wherever it is. Ultimately, Nottingham Forest are in here. This is their cup final. They're playing Manchester United in the semi-final. This is huge for them, and they're going to be up for it. And if Manchester United aren't quite up for it, even if we sort of play well and have the technically better players, the players who are up for it will beat the technically better players. So I'm thinking Manchester United or Ten Hag need to treat this game with the respect. Probably we're not treating it with enough respect as fans. We're saying, okay, rest this player, rest that player. But ultimately, when the whistle goes and it's 0-0, and you need to go and score a goal to win, the pressure will be on.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, look, it'll be a great game to watch. I think it'll be really, really live. I don't think it'll be a boring one. Manchester United don't seem to play boring games recently.
That is one thing. And do you think that helped soften the blow with the defeat at Arsenal in regards to last-minute defeat at Arsenal? It's crushing, of course. But ultimately, it was a good game. As a neutral, it was good. It kind of did soften the blow. Like if that was under Louis Van Gaal or Jose Mourinho, and it was a sort of a ball game and we lost it in that fashion style, that would have sort of added to the sort of poor performance. But ultimately, off a good performance, well, define good performance, but a positive display compared to our expectations, that did soften the blow in regards to the defeat.
Absolutely, yeah. Look, and I've said this so many times on past podcasts, but if you have a really intelligent player in the core positions on the football pitch, it has that expectation of how you should play football. And United haven't had that consistently for the past couple of years, but having having a Martinez, a Varane, Christian Eriksen, and a Casemiro sort of on the same line, and Rashford in fantastic form. You have an expectation of how you want to play football, and look, it was reflective in some of the football we played against Arsenal in the first half. Definitely Crystal Palace for most portions of 60 minutes or so. And then City for a lot of the game on the break, they played some fantastic, real quality football. And it's an expectation now for United. It's enjoyable to watch. You can really see what Ten Hag's trying to do, and it's very clear that the players respect him.
It's interesting the point you made there casts your mind back to especially the Louis van Gaal era and the Jose Mourinho era. Whenever, even after some wins or especially after losses or draws, we'd all sit there and say, I don't care about the result. All I want is better football. I just want more exciting football. That's all I care about. And then obviously we got the result and it didn't matter. But as soon as we lost a game, said, don't care if we lose. We just need to play better football. Ultimately, now we have lost, playing the better football. And maybe there was some truth behind what we were saying.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we got a glimpse of it with Ollie in the early stages. Well,
it's interesting, but ultimately, I'll put it all back down to Erik ten Hag in regards to the way he's conducted himself away from the field in terms of the situations he had to deal with, but ultimately what he has done in terms of implementing his coaching and his football. Obviously not there yet in regards to the final profile from it, but I would love nothing more than for him to lift this trophy because in this short space of time, he bloody deserves it.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, touch wood, it'll finally happen. It's I think there's a big psychological element with United. I think having a lot more experienced players now in the squad that are used to winning trophies will really get us over the line. I mean, look, Martinez didn't play every single game in the World Cup, but he played a decent amount of games to probably feel a part of saying, you know what, I warranted that trophy as well. Sometimes when you're in World Cup squads and you're that young and you win the trophy, you probably don't feel that involved if you play like, let's say the third game of the group stage, but he had a decent run of form to say, you know what, I'm good enough to be winning on the big stage. Varane's done it with France and he's done multiple times with Madrid. Same with Casemiro. You've got these experienced players now in a squad that are used to winning trophies, and I think that's really going to help United when we touch wood, hopefully get to finals, because I have a feeling that this might not be the only semi-final that we're in this year.
Yeah, nothing's wrong. The players need to sort of learn from that Villarreal experience, but obviously whether we win or lose, fingers crossed it's a win, we need to learn from winning in terms of this semi-final. And then the final, we just wrap up. My mum's tuned in. Good to have you in here, Mum. Dad and I are glad you had the opportunity to go to Old Trafford when I was a kid. I was a teenager. The first game I went to, it was a 7 p.m. game. It was a midweek kickoff. And me and my mum were at the ground at lunchtime building up the atmosphere. So in the comments below, if you're watching on playback, your first Old Trafford experience or first Old Trafford game, let us know what game it was and sort of your thoughts about it. And we'll have a bit of a chat there because obviously a lot of this discussion today was around the Stretford end, and Old Trafford we're talking about the football, obviously goals and trophies and everything. Ultimately, Manchester United does have a home, and it is Old Trafford. It does play such a big part for Manchester United. It's not just about the football. It is about the surroundings, and that is obviously a special part. You can see a bloody Lego set. Old Trafford does play a huge part in our lives, and my dog is getting a little bit restless in regards to, I think he wants a little bit of taco. Maybe he's had dinner, so maybe a bit of a late night snack. But George here, my first Old Trafford game will be second leg next week. What an occasion. So maybe you can go live for the pubcast, George. But what an occasion that will be. Erik ten Hag qualifying for his first final. So really sort of mark that in the diary, George. Let us know. We'll stay in touch in regards to what you can do for the pubcast. But speaking of what can be done for the pubcast here, Josh, as we alluded to at the start of the show, Morgan Schneiderlin is on the verge of signing for the Western Sydney Wanderers. Fingers crossed. It'll take a little bit of luck, but definitely with some persistence. Larry and I might share some confidence that we could get Morgan Schneiderlin on the podcast to discuss that FA Cup trophy under Louis van Gaal and better times for Schneiderlin's career at United. But until then, hopefully everyone did enjoy that. Please do leave a like on the video, subscribe if you're new, and enjoy the match on Thursday morning, Sydney time, 7 a.m. Thursday morning. Larry and I will be back with a post-match review. Fingers crossed we've set ourselves up nicely for the second leg, but which George then can enjoy at Old Trafford in peace. But until then, hope everyone has a good one. Josh, thanks very much.
No worries, mate. Catch you in a bit.
Have a good one, mate. Cheers.